Welcome back, Beans Army, to another episode of the Less is More Sports Podcast, the college offseason podcast, where you could say we're less of the regular season, but more of the offseason. A little less of what we've been talking about is college basketball. We've been so consumed by college football offseason and the season starting up, and how do our predictions fare with what's going on in the college football regular season that we have completely neglected college basketball. But that changes today because to kind of sum up all the things we've neglected with the college basketball offseason, Matt and I are going to talk about our five top favorite. Wow, I just word vomited. I feel like that was awful. We're going to name our top five favorite college basketball offseason storylines. And how we're going to do this, a little unorthodox. Matt's going to give one, then I'm going to give one, and so on and so on. And we're going to start at five and then go until we reach number one. So, Matt, as always, because I dominate the intro, it's time for you to give your number five favorite college basketball offseason storyline. What you got for me?
Well, the first thing we're going to start with is the beloved team from last year. One of the four actually beloved teams from last year we got in the world's weirdest Final Four. And I'm going to start with Florida Atlantic. Are they the new Butler? And there's a lot of stuff at play when I talk about stuff like this. Number one, the core of that team is returning. They didn't lose a lot of guys at the transfer portal. They've still got John L. Davis. They've still got Vladislav Golden. They've still got Elijah Martin. And we all know what happened the last time we had a miracle run from a not exactly small conference, but not exactly big conference team. And I mean, calling the AAC a small conference is a bit of a stretch, but still a mid-major, a team in a mid-major conference that was not really as mid-major as it seemed. And now we've got FAU coming back, returning that core, returning that guys. Can they pull off the Butler special? We all remember what happened with Butler, the last second shot to Duke, coming up just a little bit short. Gordon Hayward, Matt Howard, Shelvin Mack, everybody comes back again. They go right back to the championship game and come up short. But that's not the real focus for me here. The real focus is the one other key word we've been talking about, it seems like all the time on this podcast, is conference expansion. And Butler, to me, is one of the first cases in the modern era of a team that just played themselves into a much better position. Because when Butler went on that run for those 2 years, and then they kind of lost all those guys from that team, they all declared for the NBA, graduated, were old, and then and then they kept that success up. They kept it going. And they've skid a bit in the past few years, but the difference is they're not skidding in the Horizon League. They got to move to one of the best conferences in college basketball in the Big East. And granted now, FAU also has a football program. They have other sports too that are in the American Athletic Conference. But that is one of the key stepping stones to you as a school and as an athletic department surviving expansion in this crazy time is putting together a good run, putting together a little bit of consistency, putting together all of that into your little pot and keep moving forward. And I mean, with John L. Davis, with Elijah Martin, with Vladislav Golden, and with Dusty May, they've got that going. And they're bringing back a core that shocked a lot of people. They're not going to be shocked, not going to be as shocking this time around, but consistency is key. I think these guys can have like a Butler 2008, 2009 type run. They're that good. And, they could even maybe save their school from irrelevance if like Memphis leaves, if like UTEP leaves, or not UTEP, if Memphis leaves the AAC or something crazy like that, they have a way in to playing into a better conference thanks to a potential stretch of good years from this basketball club. And that's why number five storyline is FAU. Are they the new Butler?
I don't know what's cooler, that take or how these shades make me feel wearing this on the podcast. I think Coach Prime's going somewhere. I really, I mean, even though he probably doesn't feel too cool right now, given how the game went yesterday, not gonna lie, I have a very much boost of confidence wearing this hat and shades on the show. I'm gonna do this from now on. And Matt's probably over there thinking like, oh, if only Les's ego didn't need to get any bigger. This is getting ridiculous. But no, I think that's a great storyline because and I think you touched on it perfectly because Florida Atlantic for FAU, they're going to go from being the hunters to being the hunted because now, like you said, everyone expects them to be good. They went to the Final Four last year. They got everybody back. and you'd actually be proud of me, Matt, because FAU is actually a part of one of my narratives. However,
Good
it's
job.
not a part of my number five. My number five, I feel like if you watch this podcast, it's going to be pretty self-explanatory. And we're going to talk, and my number five is going to be following that absolutely crazy transfer portal that we've seen really the last several years in college basketball. But this past offseason was the biggest one in college basketball history. We saw all kinds of big names going to new places. We saw Hunter Dickinson going to Kansas. I know that's the one everyone's talking about. Beneficiary to my Texas Longhorns, Hook 'em Horns, baby. We got Max Abmas going to Texas. Ryan Nimhard following in his brother's footsteps, going to Gonzaga, and so on and so on. And of course, when you see this much of, these many great players changing teams like this, and of course, it creates more parity. And what's the word I'm looking for? Help me out here, Matt.
I think parity was the word you were looking for.
Parity is one of them, but I was going somewhere else with this. And I guess it makes it so much more interesting and creates almost a power shift with college basketball. And it makes, well, I guess parity would be the word to use there, because now like everyone's more competitive. You know what? I'm rambling. Screw it. But anyways, I think the storyline that not enough people are talking about, except on this show, because I think Davion and Marcellus, when we had them on the show a while back, touched on this very well, and how the transfer portal is actually affecting the recruiting scene. I think that's a story that's worth talking about that not as many are. Because like Davion and Marcellus both said, teams are starting to realize how important having experienced guys is for deep tournament runs. And the portal is going to put a damper on, really going after that home run recruit. Don't get me wrong, they're still going to get recruited. If you can play, you can play. But there's going to be more of a priority over guys that have already proven it at this level and teams going after them than it will be going after these home run recruits. And especially with like all the other options, like with the G League, Ignite, and all that stuff, and the other leagues where players can go. I mean, the question is to be answered, will it deter high profile recruits away from going to college basketball? I think for the first time in NBA draft history, the top 5 picks didn't come from the college level. So that's going to be a very interesting storyline to follow, and how the transfer portal not only affects the parity of teams across college basketball, but how it affects the recruiting scene altogether.
Right. That's a good point, because it brings me right into my number 4 storyline, which is all
Perfect.
about that transfer portal, which is one of the most interesting teams on paper to me this season. And that would be a team where, if they hadn't had extracurriculars occurring around them, would probably be one of my favorites, even in a very tough conference, and that's West Virginia. I think we all kind of have been following that story a little closely, especially from Bob Huggins going on that Cincinnati news channel and saying those things about Xavier fans, which will not be repeated here because they are reprehensible.
We love Xavier on this podcast. Shout out to
Yeah.
Davion McKnight.
We know. That's why we're not going to talk about it.
Right.
And then, of course, the drunk driving arrest in Pittsburgh, which was somehow caused by Taylor Swift. Still not sure how that happened. But, it's been a tumultuous offseason from did I resign? Did I not resign? Are they forcing me to resign? The civil war between the donors that apparently happened there. We lost the fact that West Virginia had a pretty good team. I mean, you lose Trey Mitchell now. You lose Joe Toussaint. James Okonkwo's gone. It looks like Bob Huggins is gone. You've got Josh Eilert in. It looks like it's going to be a rough season in Morgantown. But then you look at their transfer portal class. Let me tell you, I mean, getting Kirk Kriisa from Arizona. You've got Jesse Edwards coming in from Cuse. Quinn Slaslinski from Iona. Akok recently comes from Georgetown.
Which student sections are going to have so much fun with that name.
Yes, they are. Unfortunately,
it's going to be sad too.
It is. You've got Raekwon Battle, a guy who I think is absolutely amazing, coming in from Montana State, along with guys like Jeremiah Biembry and Noah Farrakhan. And you throw that in with a guy like Jose Perez, who was
I do want to correct. It's Farrakhan. It is Farrakhan. We had to get that straight. It is Farrakhan.
Farrakhan. Okay. You say it in your head before the show 50 times, and you still come on and butcher it.
To be fair, like I've been following Noah Farrakhan since he was in high school. He was on that loaded IMG team with Armando Baycott and a couple other guys that were McDonald's All Americans. So that was a fun team to
You've
watch.
had the edge on me. He's been at
Yeah,
Eastern.
I've had experience following Noah Farrakhan probably over you, so
He's
I
been
do have
hiding
the
out in
advantage.
Eastern Michigan for a while. And you combine that with Jose Perez, who was just an absolute stalwart defender for them last year. When you bring in those type of guys from the transfer portal, you just brought in a bunch of dogs. I mean, those guys are some tough defenders. Those guys are some ballers. Akak and Kirsa especially. I mean, those guys are tough. And I mean, it's going to be a weird season in Morgantown, but I am really interested to see what this core of guys can do for Josh Elert, especially in the wake of one of the most tumultuous off seasons in Morgantown. And I mean, the Big 12 is always an interesting conference. I think if these guys take that adversity and gel it all together, they've got at least 5 guys in that transfer portal class who are veterans, who play tough, who still play like what we would call West Virginia basketball, that ground and pound, if you will, of Bob Huggins. And they've got a baller in Raekwon Battle. So I am really interested to see what this interesting team on paper does, how they overcome that noise, and what kind of noise they're going to make in the Big 12. So my number 4 storyline is the most tumultuous offseason leads to the most interesting roster on paper for me, the West Virginia Mountaineers of the Big 12.
So I think it's safe to say that West Virginia and Bob Huggins have bad blood.
Yes, and it used to be Mad Love.
I
He
love
made
it.
he made a really deep cut, man.
I love the Taylor Swift references here. But you know
So
who doesn't have bad blood, and we have mad love for college basketball fans and all the returning stars returning to college basketball this year, which is my number 4 storyline. Um, as you all remember in our cap or no cap episode last year for college basketball, which we will be doing in the next couple weeks, um, Oscar Tshiebwe returning to college basketball was the first time that the reigning player of the year can't return to college basketball since Tyler Hansbrough. Now, with Zach Edey returning to college basketball, we now have back-to-back years where the reigning player of the year is coming back to college. And this is where I'm going to get a little fan interaction going with this one. If you all can tell me when the last time that happened, please comment in the comment section below, because that would be a very interesting fact that me and Matt would both love to know. But obviously, Zach Edey returns. Of course, Duke returns 4 starters from last year's team. Marquette, FAU, which is where I was going with your point. They return majority of their dominant rosters. It goes to show the impact that NIL is making for in college basketball. And I remember, the last part of the 2010s decade, a lot of college basketball fans were complaining about how players don't stay long enough and how they don't really get a feel for their teams. Well, that's all changing, because now that players have opportunities to make money, it's great for obviously the players, but it's also giving the fans what they've claimed they've wanted this entire time, and that's for players to stay longer. And it's now encouraging recruits that, maybe are on the fence of, should I go pro? Shouldn't go pro? And now it's like, well, I can make money. So, I mean, I can just go back to school if I'm on the fence. I want to at least approve my draft stock enough to where it should be a no-brainer whether I declare or not. But also, I think it kind of trending from a similar theme from my number 5, it adds parity to college basketball. When so many teams are returning experienced guys, it's only going to make for more competitive matchups, not only in the regular season, but in the postseason as well. So I think with all the return of all the stars that are coming back to college basketball, that had to be my number 4 favorite off-season storyline to follow.
And speaking of people with a homecoming, here's my number 3 storyline, which is there are 2 programs who have had pretty recent success, but also have suffered some pretty big setbacks, led by dudes who used to play for them. The first being, of course, Hubert Davis of North Carolina. We all know what happened last year, and we were all still, frankly, kind of shocked by it. And the other being Jawan Howard at Michigan. Another guy who, when they get in the tournament, 2 guys who, when they get in the tournament, make a lot of noise, but getting there with the talent they have is a bit more of a slog for their fan bases than they expect. And the question now for me is, do these 2 avoid the hot seat? Because let me tell you something. It's getting spicy in Ann Arbor and it's getting spicy in Chapel Hill, because you can't miss the tournament with these kind of talent that you've got and not expect there to be any kind of pushback at all. Last year, Michigan had some dogs. They had Jet Howard, they had Hunter Dickinson, Joey Baker, Kobe Buffkin. Those guys, they're gone. They thought they had the answer when they brought in Caleb Love. Caleb Love, not there. But there is a lot to like with the Michigan roster. I'm not going to lie. I would even say they have 4 transfers, and I know there's only about 3 listed. They've got Namari Burnett from Alabama. They've got Trey Jackson from Seton Hall, kind of an under the radar guy I like. And they've got Oliver, and here's another name I've been practicing, but I'm going to butcher. They've got Olivier Nakahoma from Tennessee. And I would even say they've got a 4th guy in Jalen Llewellyn, a guy who came in from the Ivy League. He came in from Princeton. I thought he was going to be one of the top point guards in the Big Ten last year. Ended up having just an abysmal, awful injury the first week of the season and never played. And now he's back. And I think he's going to be, I really do think, even coming off an injury, I really think this guy is one of the premier point guards of the Big Ten, especially this year. When he gets healthy, he's already healthy. He's going to be great. You throw in a guy like George Washington III, from Chaminade, they've got a good class. And the Big Ten is probably going to be kind of weak this year. I mean, it's going to be very top heavy. So I think they've got a good shot, but they've got to make it work. Michigan has way too much talent, and they've lost too much talent to keep the fans complacent for very long. Even Juwan Howard, who's beloved there, he's got to get these guys together. I think he's got a good group to do it. And of course, we've already talked a little bit about North Carolina, but I can't even describe what they've done. I mean, yeah, there were a lot of issues. Leaky Black's gone. Pete Nance exhausted his eligibility. Caleb Love, he's out. Caleb Love now wanders around the Pac 12 wondering where it all went wrong. But they got one hell of a transfer class to come in. I mean, I guess the most notable guy here is Harrison Ingram from Stanford, just an absolute beast. Then you throw in James Okonkwo from the aforementioned West Virginia Mountaineers, Cormac Ryan, a sharpshooter from Notre Dame, Jalen Withers from Louisville, one of the few kind of bright spots they had last year in an abysmal campaign, and Paxton Wojcik from Brown, another guy who I think could be really good. And they got one of the biggest moves in the offseason with Elliot Cadeau. Did I say that right? Cadeau.
It's Cadeau, yeah.
Cadeau reclassified and joined in with that team. And keep in mind, they've still got RJ Davis and they've still got Armando Bacot. After last year, there are absolutely no excuses for North Carolina and
None.
Hubert Davis. They have an absolutely loaded roster. They have a surprisingly deep roster. If they don't make moves with these guys, it's almost over. I mean, it will be over for Hubert Davis in North Carolina, especially after last year's interesting, abysmal, just chaotic, downright awful campaign. So that's my number 3. 2 programs with some transfers and some beloved hometown guys in Juwan Howard and Hubert Davis. And how do UNC and Michigan avoid the hot seat? My number 3 storyline for the 2023 season.
It's as if we talk about the topics, leading up to each show outside of the show, because so far our narratives have just been so cohesive with each other. Because my number 3 favorite storyline that I followed this offseason was the whole Caleb Love saga. Because as you all remember, North Carolina's coming off of the championship appearance. Of course, the fans still to this day brag about how they ended Coach K's career. Yeah, we don't have to talk about that for obvious reasons. I'm still salty about that. I hate you all. You all suck. GTHC. But anyways, of course, and then they have the absolutely disappointing season last year, and we're all like, we don't know what's going on in Chapel Hill. And then, Caleb Love decides to transfer. Caleb Love was a big part of the Carolina success in that championship appearance team. And then the initial word is, he's going to go to Michigan. Then you find out he can't go to Michigan because he can't make the grades or he doesn't get the credits don't transfer. And then insert all kinds of North Carolina fake class jokes going on here. And then he finally does find a home in Arizona. But just that whole chaos going on there was just so wild. It's because it's so much of what's really going on here. I feel like there's so much at play here that we really don't know about. And that's why I guess to me, it was just so intriguing. I mean, obviously I'm not, even though I am a Carolina hater, I am a Kentucky hater, I am an OU hater, I am not a Caleb Love hater. I don't hate on these athletes. So I really did wish him the best, but this was just wild. And of course, it sparked so many questions about every party. I think it even added to one of your narratives you just said, and that's talking about how much Juwan Howard is on the hot seat if he can't get some of these transfers to be able to come in because of this issue. Because it's like because I feel like a lot of recruits may have had the same problem that Caleb Love did, but luckily he was able to assemble a team that didn't. But anyways, yeah, the chaos behind that whole Caleb Love saga was just so crazy to follow, and it had to be one of the top storylines to follow this college basketball offseason. So that's why I had to include it in my top 5. So that wraps up number 3 for me.
Hey, Les.
Hey, Matt.
You want to know something that's really chaotic?
I would love to.
The entire freaking Big East Conference is freaking chaotic. And that's my number 2 storyline is that every Big East game this year, or at least 90% of them, is going to be appointment television. You've got the defending national champion UConn. They didn't lose too much. They've reloaded. You've got them. You've got Marquette that you've aforementioned, a senior lane team who's looking to avenge a somewhat disappointing season. And it even goes beyond the good teams, man. You've got some of the more interesting coaching battles. We all know what happened with Ed Cooley in Providence. Now Kim English is in at Providence. He did what he could to salvage that roster, and he did his best. And they don't like Ed Cooley at Georgetown now, and he's done his best with Georgetown. Oh man, you've got Creighton still waiting around with some of the guys they've got. They may not have some of the powers they did before, but they're still a really freaking good team. You've got Shaheen Holloway trying to prove himself at Seton Hall. It's a loaded, and I am excluding one team at the moment because I think we all know where this is going. But the Big East is just going to be appointment viewing. There are so many teams in that conference that are going to be just absolutely electric and have really good rosters. And I can't wait to watch every second of it with guys like Kim English, Ed Cooley, Bobby Hurley. I mean, and another coach who we're going to get to in a bit, all at the helm. The Big East Conference is going to be an absolute bloodbath. And I mean, I can honestly see, stranger things have happened in the NCAA tournament, but I can honestly see almost all of that conference outside of, I'm sorry, I love you, Butler. I've met Butler Blue. I love Butler Blue. He was eating leaves, and they had to try to pry him out of his mouth when I met him. But Butler, Seton Hall probably won't make it, but they'll be close. I can honestly see quite a few of those teams, if not all but 2, making the NCAA tournament just because of how deep that conference is. And with the defending national champion UConn at the helm, they've got the hunted. They're going to be the hunted now because those Big East teams, they'll want their shot at the Huskies, and it's going to be appointment television.
Word on the street is Butler should have threw my man Matt some more scholarship money so he could have afforded to go there. Because Matt, it seems like he is a Butler. Matt is just a Butler fan at heart. I mean, he stays up past his bedtime and watches Butler games late at night. That's how he found out about Theo John a couple years ago, if you all remember, which I absolutely love that segment for him because it was just so entertaining to listen to, and I loved it.
Theo Johns.
Theo, yeah, but who actually I still think he was a better Duke addition than what a lot of Duke fans believe. But I think all good things have to come to an end, Matt, because this is the first narrative where mine and yours don't really go hand in hand with each other. But I guess we had to be different. We say that, but no, I think it is. But obviously we have to be different at some point. And number 2 is I'm not even going to sugarcoat it. It's definitely a homer storyline for me. And that's the health of Kyle Filipowski and Mark Mitchell for me. Obviously, being a Duke fan, what's crazy to think about is that Kyle Filipowski basically was winning ACC Rookie of the Week on a weekly basis last year. But he's had this crazy problem that was dating back to high school, and that's that he has oversized hips. So he had to have hip surgery in the offseason, kind of shave his hips down to a normal size so that he could actually function and play at full potential. So to tell me that this guy who is going into his sophomore season as a lot of people's preseason ACC Player of the Year pick, he's a popular pick for winning Player of the Year in college basketball this year, and we haven't even seen him really at full health yet because he's had this hip problem dating back to high school, and he really hasn't even been able to move properly. So the storyline I've been following, of course, is how is the surgery going? Is he expected to make a full recovery? When is he going to start contact drills again? And now he officially has started contact drills again. He is starting to practice at full capacity, which is a great sight to see. And of course, Mark Mitchell, his injury, to my knowledge, wasn't as severe. But of course, as we remember, Mark Mitchell couldn't play in the Tennessee game last year, and that was a game that we really could have used him because playing against a physical team like Tennessee, Mark Mitchell being one of the more physical players on our roster, we would have needed that presence. And of course, the stat that I love to throw out on the show is that Duke went 19-1 last year when fully healthy. And so it's who knows if Mark Mitchell could have played, maybe we could have been able to beat Tennessee. I don't know, but it is what it is. But for Duke's aspirations this year are to be really good. They have 4 returning starters for the first time since 2010. And might I remind you what happened in 2010? We hung another banner. So for Duke to reach that full potential, we definitely need key players like Kyle Filipowski and Mark Mitchell to be at full health. So the health of them this offseason obviously is going to be a big storyline that I'm following.
Hey, Les,
Hey, Matt.
whose style are you trying to imitate right now? Just be honest,
No one's. Why?
Les. Please play
I'm
along
serious.
with it. Well, who have we talked about who also wears sunglasses and hats all the time?
Oh, Coach Prime.
Yeah, Coach Prime. Well, what was Coach Prime's MO when he showed up at Colorado?
Y'all
And
go
that,
ahead and hit that portal because I got my bags coming and they all Louis.
you know who else said basically that, but he probably did it in a more threatening mafia style way?
Rick Pitino.
Rick M. effing Pitino, man.
Big
He
Rick
rolled
energy.
up. He rolled up to St. John's, looked around New York City, and said, "I'm home." And what did he do? He took a god awful roster, gutted it, and is now almost, it seems like, paying guys NIL money to sit and be walk-ons on this roster. Last, I mean, what he did, and that's my number one storyline is Rick Pitino's back in the big time, and he's back in a very, very interesting way. I mean, they kept Joel Soriano, who's a 6'11", really good guy, the heart and soul of last year's team. And it's who they put around him. My God. I mean, you go out and you get R.J. Louise from UMass. You go out and you get Chris Ledlum, a dude who Indiana was after from Harvard. Steal him away from Tennessee and Indiana. You get Jordan Dingle, who's one hell of a sharpshooter from Penn. Managed to steal him. You go out and you get Simeon Wilcher as a freshman. You go out, oh my God. I mean, the list goes on and on. You get Glenn Taylor from Oregon State. You get so many guys, and you already had Brady Dunlap on there. I mean, I can't even describe what he's done. He brought over some of his best players like Cruz Davis and Danish Jenkins from Iona. Rick Pitino turned a god awful roster, a roster that didn't win much, into a team. He told Andre Curbelo, who was an okay player for Illinois, who was kind of bad at St. John's, and basically was like, go to Southern Miss. Now, I'm bringing in R.J. Louise. And I mean, it's just incredible what he's done with that roster. And I mean, you give Rick Pitino NIL, so nobody's breathing down his neck anymore. You put him in the Big East and the Northeast where he's at home. You put him in Madison Square Garden, for God's sake. It's going to be something. There's got to be a 30 for 30 about Rick Pitino in New York, man. What he did in Louisville was already documentary worthy. What he did before that was documentary worthy. And now you're putting Ricky P in the Big Apple, and you've given him a loaded roster, and you've invigorated one of the sleeping giant fan bases in college basketball in the St. John's Red Storm. I am really excited to see what Rick MF and Pitino does in his first year in the Big Apple. It's probably the last stop. But it's gonna be a hell of a ride.
Man, I'm not gonna lie. Matt's number one had a lot of big Rick energy going on here. But no, I absolutely agree 100%. This is gonna be must see what is going on in St. John's television. We just game in and game out because Rick Pitino, with all the controversy, comes a lot of success in the same time. He is one of the best coaches that has ever coached in college basketball, and he is no shortage of storylines. So this is going to be insanely entertaining, and I can't wait for it. And now I think it's officially time to get to my number one, the number one narrative in which we will end the show on, because we actually made great time. We have about 8 minutes left, and I'm not even going to need all 8 minutes to talk about this one. And my number one narrative that I've been following, and if you follow this podcast, you follow my social media pages, this should come in as absolutely no surprise to anyone, because my Less is More Sports podcast Facebook page has basically turned into this kid's fan page. And that is the recruitment of Cooper Flagg. And if you don't understand the buzz behind Cooper Flagg, you just need to catch any highlights, any game, and they will speak for himself. I've been following Cooper Flagg for a very young age, and I can tell you he is not only the best player in high school basketball, he is the best American recruit since LeBron James, and I'm going to go ahead and say it now. He's the truth. And of course, the big question is, when you have a player that is that good and that talented, where are they going to play? And of course, to the delight of me, yes, Matt.
I know the answer.
Where's he going to go?
Cooper Flagg, you are a Maine Black Bear.
Hey, that would be crazy. That would be crazy. But to the delight of me, come to find out that Cooper Flagg's dream school is Duke University. So obviously, the storyline following Flagg's recruitment is not necessarily if Flagg will come to Duke, but when he'll come to Duke. And of course, this past offseason, he reclassified to the class of 2024, so making his trip to college, even sooner. But even though that it almost seemed like a surefire thing that Cooper Flagg was going to come to Duke, things are heating up. As I mentioned earlier in the podcast, because, we got to relate everything to everything. The G League is becoming a more and more option for player development route. Now that's heating up. Could Cooper Flagg skip college altogether and just go the G League route like Ron Holland and Tyler Smith are doing, and Modest Buzelis are doing right now? There's apparently some news heating up that Kansas is playing a big role, and Kansas has been on a tear in the recruiting trail right now.
Oh, dude.
It's been wild. Yeah, so Kansas is making a lot of news. And this past weekend, Cooper Flagg was on UConn's campus, but of course he had to pick the weekend that Duke was also on UConn's campus, so that's pretty fitting, if you ask me. But no, UConn was a popular opinion because him being from Maine, UConn being the closest powerhouse to his hometown, it almost made sense that he might go there too.
Yeah.
But from the reports I'm hearing, the Maine visit didn't really go that great, apparently. He's kind of trending away from UConn. Of course, I'm going to say it's because Duke was on campus and beat UConn 41-7 in football. I'm going to throw that in there just because I have to. But now it really seems like it's becoming a three-headed battle, or a King Ghidorah, if you will. Going to steal Matt's line there. Between Duke, Kansas, and the G League. And it's going to be very interesting within the next couple months to see which one of those three is going to land the most talented American recruit since LeBron James. So that in itself has been a storyline to follow. And again, if you're watching along on this podcast and you didn't guess that this was going to be my number one storyline to follow, are you even a fan of the show? Do you even follow us? That's just wild.
Here, yeah.
You must live under a rock. You must be a Patrick Starr of our fan base.
That's not what he wanted to cook.
But anyways, that wraps up Matt and I's top 5 favorite college basketball offseason storylines. Matt, do you have anything you want to add before we get out of here?
Yeah, I mean, it's actually a serious point. I mean, have you had a chance to see the Flory Budinga from Kokomo?
Yeah, I've seen him.
Imagine him and Cooper Flagg on the same team.
I don't want to think about it because I want Flagg at Duke. I want Flagg at Duke. I don't want to think about it.
Be the most like, oh my god, type.
Good luck getting a shot. Good luck getting a shot at the rim.
Pure physical. Oh my god, that would just be like, I don't even know how you could score on that. You just have to stand. You'd have to get Steph Curry and have him shoot at half court with the kind of length that team would have.
the whole city of Lawrence, Kansas is going to be one big block party.
Yeah, I mean, whoa, my God. But yeah, that's the only thing I could think of when you mentioned Kansas. Like Flory Badinga and Flag together.
Yeah.
Good Lord. Good Lord.
Oh
But
my
yeah,
gosh. Yeah.
that's the only thing I could think about was how many blocks that duo would ratchet up. Oof.
I mean, we're talking about a guy that was getting a man's triple double nightly in the EYBL. I mean, and
Yeah.
Cooper Flag, I'm talking about. And Floyd Badinga, of course, that was a recruit that I really wanted Duke to get as well. But obviously, has already committed to Kansas, and he will be playing under Coach Bill Self for the time being. But yeah, anyways, two really good players. Yeah, like I said, the entire city of Lawrence, Kansas is going to be a block party, and that's just all I have to say about that. But that wraps up Matt and I's top 5 college basketball offseason storylines that we've been following. We would love to hear your opinions. What storylines have you been paying attention to? Let us know in the comment section below. As always, like and subscribe to the Less is More Sports YouTube and Spotify channels to tune into every episode. Tell us in the comment section what you like, what you don't like about each episode. Be sure to follow our social media pages at Less is More Sports Podcast on Twitter, at Less is More Sports Podcast on Facebook, and at less is more _18 on Threads to get the latest up to date on our newest content coming each week. And without further ado, another good episode in the books, Matt. I enjoyed it. So I hope you all enjoyed it as much as me and Matt do. But officially, we are out of here. See y'all next time.
I love you, Matt Gay.
We're not going to talk about that.
But the people
Can you do the naked mole rap? Can you do the naked mole rap?
No, I can't do the. I can't do it. It hurts my voice. I used to.
Wait, I'm tripping. You're talking about the Colts kicker. I thought you were talking about the coach we were talking about midweek. I'm sorry.
No. I'm not talking about Randy Bennett. No, I'm not talking about the St. Mary's right now.
We're talking about the kicker that kicked 4 50-yard field goals for the Colts to win today.
Yes. I'm talking about how I love Colts kicker Matt Gay. I also love Randy Bennett because he reminds me of a naked mole rat, but that's a story for another time.
That's why I asked you if you could do the naked mole rap from Kim Possible.
I used to be able to, people, but I can't anymore. And I will end on one last note. Nothing shocked me more than finding out that Dr. Draken from that show was the same guy who voiced Bender on Futurama.
What?
Because then the only thing I could think of every time I watched Kim Possible was I hoped that Dr. Draken told someone to bite his shiny metal ass.
That's crazy.
Just imagine that on Disney Channel. Bite my shiny metal ass.
Our cartoon references are on point on this podcast. We might as well be a cartoon podcast eventually.
Dig deep, damn it. We dig deep for cartoon references.
I'm officially going to end this show on Bite My Shiny Metal Ass, and that is all.
Rock on.